Welcome to the future. This is Ina Braxton from the Digital Future Lab, and you're listening to our weekly DFL podcast, where we cover the state of the gaming industry, technology, and diversity. Here are your hosts, Samantha Riley and Jesus Govella.
Hello and welcome to the DFL podcast. I'm Jesus.
And I'm Samantha, and today we're joined here with Michelle. She is a project manager for the level design team, and we're so excited to have her here. So welcome, Michelle, to the podcast.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Jesus. I'm really excited to be here.
So how are you doing lately? Is there anything happening in the project management world?
Well, we're doing fantastic, actually. The only thing is I would say we're a little bit stressed. It's crunch week. So what that basically means is that we're working on the burn down list. We're ready to release our new game to the public at 6, which is really exciting.
Super exciting. And I think at this point it's already Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 days away.
Yeah.
So it's really creeping up on us.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of planning too for us going there.
Yeah, so I definitely relate to the whole feeling stressed thing because we have to plan staffing, but then the couple days before, I feel like the week of is so intense, just cramming everything in, all the little details that you don't really think about weeks in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's really the biggest thing that we've been working towards this whole quarter. I feel so excited to be a part of 6, which is, for those listeners who may not know what 6 is, it stands for Seattle Indies Expo, and it is actually sort of a part of PAX. So it's across the street at the Motif Hotel on the 3rd floor. It goes from noon to 9, and essentially it's this really cool little festival of little indie games, and I feel so honored that our game Seed got in this year. So we get to show off all of our hard work with all of the other really cool indie games.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's really cool to be a part of. But then with that comes a lot of other things. So what is your team working on currently? Maybe break down all the tasks that you guys have to complete this week and how you guys are handling that.
Boy, that's a rough question. So during this time, anyone who else may work on the industry knows it's really chaotic. We essentially have all of our levels done, so that's really exciting. But then it's more like trying to work out the kinks, work out, every sound effect, every visual, basically make sure everything looks good, the mechanics are working smoothly, that the player is going to have a blast playing our game, because that's really what level design is all about, is we're in charge of the fun, basically making the game enjoyable to play. And I just hope that everything gets tied up to the point where it's a finished product where people enjoy themselves just even close to as much as we've enjoyed making the game.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say your team is the design, right?
Yeah.
How would you say your work differs from the other PM's work?
It's all pretty similar, but I think that what makes being a PM over the level design team really fun is basically kind of helping design the game. I not only am helping out with the tasks, but I get to kind of figure out with the team how to make the game fun. And I think being not only a project manager, but learning more about design is something that I've really become super passionate about because of the DFL, but it's been stressful. It's a good kind of stressful, but it's definitely something where I've had to really think about, to be a good employee and to be present every day and to be a good leader, you have to make sure you not only take care of your team, but you take care of yourself. And that's something that I think is really important for people who are students, employees, really anyone in the world, is to try to take care of themselves as well.
I completely agree with that. I think with our team, so we're the CM team, the community management team. There's 3 of us, but even then, if we're not balanced in our own way, and we're coming to work with a bunch of chaoticness going on in our head, and we're super stressed out, we can't do a good job. We can't get all the details organized as we should. So I agree with that point.
So Samantha, how do you like to deal with stress?
I deal with stress in a lot of different ways, and it usually just depends on what kind of stress it is. If it's stress with school, normally I try to have like a daily balance because I really try to avoid getting stressed. That's kind of like my go-to. Like if you hold everything off and the stress builds up, then you end up, having like some sort of like mental breakdown, and like I just try to avoid that by just having like a consistent routine. So I feel like just daily things I do, like when I wake up and like if I get Starbucks in the morning, that is something like if that's part of my routine, that like really helps me. It's like a moment for me. It's something that I enjoy, even though some people can argue that it's like a waste of money or whatever. But for me, like it actually starts my day and makes me feel better and like starts my day on the right foot. Or when I teach yoga, I only teach twice a week, but having that in the morning, even if I'm so exhausted from the night before because I had to stay up, studying for a test or something or finishing a project, and in the morning I don't want to go because I know I have so much stuff to do and catch up on, but I have to go because I have to teach it. Afterwards, I walk out of there and I feel so much better. So I think it's just about having those little things in your life that kind of keep you balanced, whether that's like going to the gym every day. I know a lot of people do that, or for me, teaching yoga classes, or if I have the opportunity, I haven't done this in a while, sadly, but I love getting to do yoga outside, or just being outside in general. Like, I feel like my go-to, if I'm really stressed out, or I feel like stress is coming on, before that happens, I'll like go take a walk outside, or like go be with animals. That's such a good one. Like, just be with your pets, and that definitely helps a lot.
Oh, I hear that. I'm definitely a dog person. Dogs really help me. But yeah, I can totally relate to that. And it sounds like you cope with stress similar to how I cope with stress. It's kind of a mix between having a reward for yourself, something to look forward to. So for you, that might be the Starbucks cup of coffee in the morning. And then mixing that with kind of having also a little discipline, not only rewarding yourself, but also giving yourself a few challenges and keeping yourself on track. Like how you were talking about that you wake up and sometimes you don't want to do the yoga, but when you've done the yoga, it's kind of like, oh, I've overcome this little obstacle of the day and I've done it. And if I can do this one small thing, then I can really do anything the rest of the day. So it's kind of, not only having a more positive attitude because you're happy because you've gotten that reward, but you've also done something that kind of warrants that reward in a way, because you've done your morning yoga. And it's kind of similar to me. What helps me with stress is, I think, just promising myself that I will start early and do that work, and then after I've done that work, give myself a reward. Like for me, that's going on a walk outside like you, or actually one of my favorite hobbies is singing karaoke. I love that. Makes me really, really happy. Yeah. Whether or not the songs are ballads or they're fun, I think it's just making time to be with your friends or people that make you happy. I think just striking that balance between working really hard but playing really hard, I think, is something that just really helps, striking that balance.
Yeah, and I also think kind of what you said about finding that like balance between working hard but also finding the reward. But there also is that fine line between rewarding yourself and then almost like slacking off, like too many rewards, So I definitely feel that sometimes. Like there is a point where it's kind of like, no more rewards. Like you've had 10 rewards this week,
Yeah, I definitely feel the same about the reward stuff. Whenever I get stressed, it's usually about school. So I just I usually spend the mornings doing homework and stuff just because I don't know why, that's just the best time for me. But then after like 12 or noonish, then I start to get like, okay, I've been working for like a few hours. I think I should stop, go eat lunch, and then just do something else for a while, like play video games. I play a lot of video games with my friends. So, and there's almost always someone online for me to play with.
Oh, fun. What kind of games do you like to play?
I like to play a whole bunch. First-person shooters, puzzle games, I also like solo player adventures. Yeah, when no one else is available or willing to play, I just play whatever game I haven't finished yet.
Is there a certain game that maybe helps you deal with like stress better than others, or?
Yeah, some games after a while of playing actually make it worse. Yeah, because if you like the hard games are like the platformers where you have to get to the end of the level, and then if you die, you have to restart at the beginning. So
Oh, that
after,
sounds stressful.
yeah, so after like 50 tries at a level, it starts to get a little frustrating. So then I usually like hold out until I actually finish it. And then after that, I was like, okay, that's enough. That level frustrated me. So I should probably play another game.
But, even in that case, it still brings you joy and it still brings you something, because sometimes you just need a distraction. I don't know if that sounds bad, but sometimes it just
That's
feels
exactly
good
what it
to
is.
keep
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
mind off of it, because we're not machines, we're human. And sometimes when you're part of the video game industry, you can forget that because you're so busy with everything, and you just get immersed in this world that you build, right? And it's really fun, but it also takes a lot out of you. So I think it's just really important, like we keep saying, is to just strike a balance.
Yeah, and I think it's good, like you say, distraction, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because like this is our reality, this is what we're living in, and everything, like, designing a video game, like whether we're part of the design process or we're on the other end of it where we do the community management side, we're still in it, we're still very much a part of the stress, and it's almost like we're kind of escaping to like an alternate world. It's a different reality, so I think that's why a lot of people like exercise for an escape, because you can't really think. Because when when your blood is pumping, whatever that is, I mean, even if you're just taking a walk, like you're not thinking about that reality, you're thinking about kind of this other world, as weird as that sounds.
No, I definitely relate to that with video games and movies, because whenever I go see a movie in the theater, I find it real easy just to forget about everything else and just focus on the movie. So, and then after I come out, it's like, oh, yeah, that's right, I have stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with video games, especially solo player ones that are like have a big story. You can really get like caught up in what's happening in that virtual world. Yeah.
I think it's the same for a lot of people, like binge Netflix shows.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of the same concept, because you really feel like you're in their world, like you're living that reality, and then as soon as you like turn off the show, you'll be like, oh, that's right, gotta live my own world now. But I think it's good. I think there's definitely that line where there's always that line where you can go too far, where you're like, you're not being responsible for your work, but I definitely think there should be that balance. Just like we keep saying, it's all about balance.
Yeah, and I usually hold off on playing video games or watching movies or taking a break until a good chunk of my work is done. If I play a game when I know I have something to do, then it kind of takes away from my enjoyment, just because it's always in the back of my mind. It's like at some point I have to stop and work, when I would rather just get all the work done first and then spend the rest of the day playing.
That's a good rule.
Yeah, it is. And I think also when you take that break and you come back to your work, I think that's where the joy comes from your work. Because sometimes if you do it all the time, you get tired, and that's where it actually really feels like work. But once you've taken a break, oddly, it doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels like something that it's this deep commitment that you've slowly started to fall in love with. Like, I know that I've never loved my work as much as I've loved my job here at the DFL, because even though we all need breaks, I think that kind of world that you're talking about escaping to, we are so fortunate that we get to build our own world, that we get to build and illustrate for people to escape to and have fun in, and that's such a beautiful thing.
It's really cool to think about how we're talking about how we're dealing with stress through these other outlets, but the thing that we're building right now is going to help so many people deal with their own stress. So it's kind of like a full circle. It's really cool.
I know, that is really, really cool.
Yeah, and we're stressing about it too.
Yeah. we're stressing about something that's supposed to help people with their stress.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I like the idea of like balance. I feel like for me, I kind of just try to save everything because I mean, besides like my daily routines, like there's little things that take up maybe like 20 minutes of my day, or if like I do a yoga class, literally 1 hour, that's it, and then I'm back to what I'm supposed to do. But then I try to save like the other things that help with like my mental stress for the weekend. So it's kind of like my rule, like Monday through Friday is grind time, and then Saturday and Sunday is my free time. Like, and I try not to think about anything work related, because I want to come back on Monday with like a fresh pair of eyes and be refreshed and excited to get started. Whereas if I was constantly doing everything 7 days a week, I would go crazy. So I think it's good to have that like weekend balance. That's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, and planning ahead, planning those times, because then that relaxation really turns into a reward that you're looking forward to. Like, oh, I'm going to work really, really hard during the week, but then Sunday I get to do nothing.
Yes,
and sometimes
that's the
nothing
best.
is the most refreshing thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that be napping or just spacing out or reading your favorite book or going on a walk.
It's all about the little things. It's like even like a lot of little self-care things that sometimes I like to do. Honestly, I wish I did it more, but like taking like a bath on Sunday night, like that is the best reward. And just it's only you, it's yourself. It's like really the time is endless. You can do whatever you want. You can read a book, you can like set the tone to have a relaxing night, like set up candles and stuff. I know it's not everyone's thing, but for me that's something really rewarding. Like it's not something I get to do a lot, and just really dedicating time for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely have a bit of trouble with that on the weekends. I still find myself like worrying about next week on the days where I'm supposed to be like doing whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always like, oh, it's this. I have to do this on Monday, but I could do it now, so why not?
I could see you
Yeah.
being like that because you're, I don't know the word for it, but you're the opposite of a procrastinator.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's really good though.
it's really good,
honestly.
because I'm definitely a procrastinator. So sometimes I'm very good at blocking out when I need to block out on the weekends. So I definitely dedicate that time, but I do find myself sometimes on Monday being a little bit overwhelmed because I took the whole weekend for myself, and then Monday comes around and I'm like, I have so much to do, and sometimes I almost wish that I took part of the weekend to spend more time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But like we said, balance, because I think finding that thing that can truly take your mind off of your work or stress, like how Jesus was saying, well, I can try to do an activity, but maybe I'll still be thinking about what I have to do. But maybe that's sort of a litmus test for how effective is this outlet. Because if I'm still thinking about work, then this isn't a real outlet. Because when it's funny because I'm actually terrified of public speaking, and sometimes I can be extroverted, sometimes I can be introverted, but when I'm on stage, singing karaoke, it's like everything else melts away.
I love that.
And music is just so therapeutic, and I think it's just finding whatever it is that can give you that joy, that can distract you enough where you can be immersed, and then knowing that you're going to really get positive energy from that, so you can feel energized to then have the discipline to then go do that work, so you don't feel like tempted to procrastinate.
Yeah. You go first.
Okay, I was just gonna say the whole idea of balance. I think it looks different for everybody. Like I think some people might need a little bit more maybe self-care time for themselves than others, and I think just everyone copes with it differently. So I think balance is a very general term, but I think it's very situational to who you are and like what other things, because everyone's definition of busy is different. So it's just like everyone's definition of stress is a little bit different. So I think when we say balance, it's really finding what works for you. So if everything that we're saying, it's all different. Like some of us might take time every single night to do something that distracts you. Some of us might do it once a week. But I think just finding what like keeps you sane is the best way to do it, because we're all different.
Yeah, and to Michelle's point about music, I do listen to a lot of relaxing music whenever I'm doing work, just because it calms me down. Yeah, definitely a lot of video game background music, just because it's designed to be in the background and not interfere with whatever you're thinking about.
I kind of want to insert some here. I feel like that'd be cool to like insert music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I also do the same thing. Whenever I'm doing something that's on the computer, it's really easy to get kind of like, I feel myself getting more stressed if I don't have music on. So I listen to this like waterfall soundtrack that has like nature sounds. It's amazing. It like just calms me down so much.
Yeah, and I think giving yourself a soundtrack. It's like you have a soundtrack to your mission, right? Like for Jesus, maybe Jesus is doing some work, and so he feels like, oh, this is my video game mission. It's almost like he's listening to the same music, and it's making it fun. And then for you, it's almost like you're doing whatever task you want to do in this beautiful, enchanting forest next to the waterfalls.
Oh,
so maybe that's you. And for me, it's almost like a cross between that. So I know what's really popular in the lab is it's called Chill Hop. It's like this channel where it's sort of like this instrumental sort of hip hop mixed with like beats but no vocals. And so it's sort of like it's my mission music. It sort of feels like relaxing. It just kind of gives me this sense of purpose. Like I have, like I said, sort of a soundtrack to my life. So it just kind of gives whatever I do feel like it has purpose.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked about stress from all of us, what would you guys say is some advice you would give to people who are feeling stress right now?
I think, like we were saying, I think it's just important to really think about what brings you joy, to set time ahead of time to give you a reward, something to look forward to. I will admit that I grew up with clinical depression, and it was something that really prevented me from being successful because it's easy to fall victim to your feelings and emotions, especially when you deal with that illness. I know that mental health is a little bit of taboo in this country, but I feel like it shouldn't be. I feel like everyone deals with it in their own way, and I think that's really strengthened my ability to really recognize when I'm stressed, to like know and if you aren't as aware, think about like, what am I doing? Like, how is my behavior changing? Is anything starting to fall from the wayside? Like, is my room getting dirtier? Is my car getting dirtier? Am I feeling tired? Am I, are things starting to feel like they're falling apart? And instead of pressuring yourself to fix it all in one day, start thinking about what are the small steps I can take every day to improve my situation and to give yourself those small rewards. Think about little things you can do that you can mark as accomplishments every day to give yourself, some pride, where you go to bed at night and you can feel good. I think that's what's really important. It's sort of like that old adage a lot of our parents say about relationships, don't go to bed angry. Well, the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. So don't go to bed angry, even with yourself. Wake up in the mirror the next day, even if you weren't perfect. Think about what you want to accomplish for the day. What is the small reward you're going to get? Or if you don't get that, if you just have a really stressful day and everything feels negative, even if you plan it for the next day. But I think it's all a part of just being very self-aware, and how you can take small steps to healing.
I love that. And thank you for sharing, the stuff about your childhood, because I know I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, whether big or small. So thanks for sharing that. But I like what you said about the like little things, because that's exactly what I was thinking about. It really is all about the little things. Like, I don't do this every day, but a lot of times before I go to bed, I like ask myself, like you talked about, like if you don't go to bed angry at yourself. So like I always ask myself, like, what was my highlight for the day, or am I low light for the day? And it's a moment to reflect. And if I notice that I don't have a highlight, or if I notice that I have a very, severe low light or something like that, it keeps myself on track, and it's a moment for me to think about how I'm going to fix that tomorrow. Because I think in order to be in balance, like you usually want to have a pretty good highlight, and then, if my low light is something really small, then I know I'm on the right path. I know that I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, that I'm not overstressing myself, but it's almost like a check-in. And I try to do this, to my friends and family as well. Like, I'll ask them, like, what's your low light for today? And sometimes people don't really notice they have a low light until they really sit down and reflect. So I think it's a good moment for you to just rethink about your day or maybe your week and keep yourself on track. Because sometimes it's easy, you can let a lot of stress build up, and you sometimes don't even realize you're stressed till you're really deep in it, and it's a lot harder to come out of it.
And I think that's where the self-awareness really comes from, is really starting to recognize, how you're feeling, and then knowing how to take yourself out of it, which is a lot easier said than done. So I think, again, like you said, it's so personal, right? I mean, some people just don't react the same way to stress, or maybe they just don't realize it as quickly as others. And I think just trying to be as proactive as possible. But what about you, Jesus?
I would say to reflect also, just at the end of the day, or whenever you get home from like work or something, because I do that too, and I do find that some days I do go home and then I'm like, oh, I should have done this, like some regrets, like, and then try to fix those tomorrow or whenever I go to work next.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all about just making yourself a better person. We're not perfect. We all have our low days. I think it's a lot of that's why a lot of times like people do journaling. I think that can be really helpful. Maybe if you can't mentally reflect and you need like a visual, just writing it down, maybe like what you accomplished today, what your reward was, and you can keep that going. And maybe if you didn't get a reward, you can keep that in mind for tomorrow. So I think if it's hard for you to imagine it in your head and just reflect, you can write it down, and that could probably help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like looking at like a checklist of things. Like kind of like we have a to-do checklist for every day for the CM stuff.
Yeah.
And then it shows what we have to do for the day, and I like just checking things off and seeing at the end of the day that everything was done.
Yeah. I love that. I think that works really well for both of us.
Oh yeah, and just the act of checking something off, it's so good. It just makes you feel so good. And even if it's small, and even if we mess up and we don't check off any of those boxes, I think just not living in that state of mind where you're punishing yourself, I think it's really easy that to do that, especially if we're thinking of our lives in checks and balances, because there's going to be times where it's not going to be as balanced as we'd like, because life isn't always perfect. And I think just understanding that it's also a process, and it's okay that we are all works in progress. We don't have to be perfect. There's going to be stages in our lives where we're going to be happier and we're going to be sad, but just kind of understanding that that's a part of life, and knowing that it's a cycle and that you will get out of it is really just deciding that for yourself. I think a lot of people like to think that they don't have as much control over their emotions, especially, for me, like I had depression. I didn't think that I had control over it. And I think it's just developing a stronger will and saying that it may not happen today, but I am in charge of my own happiness, and I can work towards that happiness. And I think feeling that sense of control is so important, and understanding, that you can take control, and it's going to take a moment, but it will happen. Patience.
Yeah. I think that was well said. Like ditto to all of that.
Yeah. And also another thing would be just to check your body too, 'cause sometimes you're tense and you don't even realize until you just calm down. Like I find myself like being like this sometimes.
Yeah,
like
locked up,
and then I don't even realize, and then later when I sit down, I'm like, oh, I was tense that whole time.
Yeah.
I
think. Sorry.
Oh, and also in the face too, because I find myself doing this a lot.
Yeah,
like
squinting.
I just squinting, and like furrowing my brow and stuff like that, and I'm like, it's just rest my face, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that because when I've said this in an episode before, but when, I think it was the 73 questions, but when I lay in bed at night and I finally get to lay in bed when I get off work, it is the best feeling in the world, and to me that's like, it's almost like a key that maybe I'm too stressed, but like when I finally get to lay in bed, I'm like, wow, this is so nice. Like I can lay down and just not do anything because I feel like my whole day is like running on a hamster wheel, and then it's like finally I just get to relax. So maybe that is something like throughout the day I should take notice of what my body's doing if I am being like, I don't know, too active at certain times, or just like not letting my body like have a break or something, because at the end of the night, you know, it's like finally I get to just like relieve all of that stress from the buildup throughout the day.
That's so true, and I totally relate to that, Samantha. You know, I'm so excited to go to bed, and I definitely relate to Jesus, because I even tell myself when I'm feeling, I don't know, kind of in this stress days, if you will, I'll just kind of pause and check in with myself, and I'll say, okay, Michelle, are your brows furrowed? Like, am I squinting? And kind of unsquint. And then the other thing is, how is my jaw? Am I clenching my teeth? Like sometimes you don't even realize that when you're really stressed and you're in this thing, just kind of start from the top of your body all the way to the bottom. Like think about like, what is your forehead doing? Like kind of, release your jaw, release your shoulders, release your hands, kind of shake them out. Maybe take a little walk, you know, and just kind of shake it out, because, you know, I think that we physically internalize all of the stress that we don't even realize we have, and that's definitely a really good point. Yeah,
I think that's why like stretching is so important. I know my other job is more like labor intensive, so they really emphasize stretching, and then I noticed a lot of other jobs where if you're using, it's more mental stress than physical stress, there's not as much emphasis on stretching. But I do think stretching is not just good for like physical health, but it's also good for mental, because you know, if you stretch out your body, you feel a little bit more loose, a little bit more relaxed. It's a lot easier for you to work, you know, and it helps you a lot. So I think just having like a quick, even if it's 5 minutes, like stretching before your day, before you like walk into the DFL, just have a quick stretch. That might make you feel a lot better.
Wow, you guys, I've had such a good time talking to you about you know, all the stress management, because I think I'm going to try some of this stuff when I get home, because I think it's really easy to get caught up. And I think just striking that balance, doing things that make me happy, feeling grateful for the things that I have, and planning on, you know, if there's anything that I'm unhappy about, just kind of starting to make a plan on how to address those things. I think just being more proactive, you know, like Jesus, maybe just like starting out in the morning and getting some of those things out of the way, so I get time to really have more joy in my life. I think that you guys made a lot of good points, and it's definitely something I'm going to be thinking about tonight, especially during crunch week, especially when we're gearing up to go to 6, and that way I can be a better PM to my team, I can be a better wife to my husband, and I can just be a better human being. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I had a blast, and I'm looking forward to maybe the next one.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, thank you so much for being on here. I think I feel, honestly, I feel like ready to take on the rest of the day. Like I feel pretty de-stressed already just talking about it, but I mean, I know I'll take a lot of what you guys said into consideration. Even some stuff I said that I've done occasionally, like just remembering to do more of that. So this was a good reminder for me, honestly, to take more time to de-stress. So.
Yeah, me too. You guys said a lot of really good things that I'd like to try too. And also just saying the things I do out loud. Yeah, it's kind of like a reminder to myself.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much, Michelle. It was an honor to have you on here. And that is it. Thank you guys for listening.
Yep.
Yeah, and come please visit us at 6. We'd love to see you.
Yes, we will be there this Sunday from
noon to 9, I think?
Yes, 12 to 9.
12 to 9.
12 to 9.
12 to 9 at the Motif Hotel on the 3rd floor across the street from PAX. Come and check us out.
Yes.
Yep. See you all next week.
Woo!
Yay, over.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Digital Future Lab and on Twitter at DFL_studios. Tune in next time for more on games, technology, and diversity.